We were talking, and he was like, Trevor, you've got a strange accent, Trevor. You've got a strange accent. Tell me, Trevor, tell me, where are you from? And I said, well, Jeremy, I'm from South Africa. He was like, ooh, South Africa? That's amazing, yeah, that's amazing. So what, South Africa, are you Zulu? And I was like, no. Good guess, though. I'm not. I'm actually coloured. He was like, oh, don't say that. That's racist, right? That's racist. You don't use that word, coloured, right? You don't use that word out here, Trevor. That's racist, right? Yeah, you don't call people coloured here, right? You don't call yourself that, Trevor. You're free here, brother. You're free. Yeah. You don't use that term, right? You call yourself mixed race, right? Mixed race. That's the PC term worldwide, mixed race. Got to be careful, though, coming to South Africa, you know? Because you'll come to South Africa and you'll meet up with a coloured person and be like, excuse me, sir, are you mixed race? They'll probably be like, you're massive mixed race.
Ayan ay bida Batman.
Now, although this video might come off like a defense of Trevor Noah and his comedy, I just want to assure you that that is not the case. I don't think that he has lost his way or has become famous and sold out. I also don't think that we, as South Africans, lost a good one or any such moral grandstanding positions. My argument is simply this. Trevor Noah was a really funny comedian, and his comedy has always been highly relatable and based on his experiences as a racially ambiguous person growing up in Soweto, Johannesburg. However, now he's not at home anymore, and he doesn't have the same audience. So I want to tell you the story of how he got from local funny man to successful sad sack. Before I dive into this topic, I just want to reiterate that I have a zero tolerance policy for harassment on this channel. I understand that some people might feel passionate about this topic, but you should also know that this is just the internet and we don't actually know each other. Also, please Trevor, don't sue me, these are just my opinions and I respect your right to be cringe.
This time for Africa, Zamina,
Now, before I get into my main point, let's just briefly recap Trevor Noah's past and how he was perceived by the general South African audience. Trevor Noah was born 20th February 1984 in apartheid South Africa to a Xhosa woman named Patricia Noah and a Swedish-German father named Robert. He grew up in the township of Soweto-Johannesburg under the care of his grandmother and amongst many siblings. In other words, he had a black mother and a white father, which would make him a colored person. Side note, the term colored is not offensive in South Africa, it's a racial category and is culturally significant to many people. Furthermore, interracial relationships were illegal during apartheid, thus Trevor's parents were not allowed to have had relations or children accordingly. Therefore, Trevor's entire existence was deemed a crime. If you'd like to know more about the hardships of living as a criminal from the age of birth, I would highly recommend that you read his autobiography. It's pretty insightful and a true retelling of the state of affairs of things under the apartheid regime. However, as most of you know, in March 2015, Jon Stewart made the announcement that Trevor Noah would be his new successor as the host of The Daily Show, to begin on 28 September 2015. Now, I'm choosing to speak for the entire South Africa when I say we absolutely died, met Jesus, resurrected, and believed for the first time that our Waka Waka Africa era had started. You have to understand that Trevor Noah is actually an edgy comedian. Not Comedy Central edgy, but non-woke. He didn't make fun of white people or rich people or whatever. He made fun of absolutely everyone.
But then black people never get a break. Ever noticed that? You'll say stuff and then they'll fix it. You'll be like, yeah, that is when I realized that it was better for us to be part of management. No, Jabu, management. Eh? It's not management, it's management. Management. No, management. Go up early, management. Management. No, not with your body, with your words. Management. Management. Very good. Management. management.
The shock of seeing our favorite being on an iconic American show and also knowing that his comedy would push boundaries in the American comedy scene was absolutely everything. Trevor Noah's stand-up shows had always united people in South Africa across race, gender, sexuality and politics. Not because he's Beyonce or anything, but because he has never ever asked for permission to laugh or mock anyone. So, what has changed? Why am I watching a video from Diesel Patches calling Trevor Noah unfunny and nodding along in agreement?
Let's begin.
Trevor Noah has got to be the least funniest late night host currently. She doesn't count. His humor lately has kind of dipped down and he kind of acts like a 2012 YouTuber. He just tries way too hard. Before this pandemic, when Trevor was actually a late night host, he was still pretty bad, but I would argue his stand-up's actually kind of decent.
Now, in this video, I'm not going to be reframing Noah as a victim. He's grown and luckier than most people could ever possibly be. He's not a victim of his circumstances, nor is he someone that went from rags to riches and carries the inevitable narcissism of it all. If you think that he became arrogant as he got the position of the host of The Daily Show, then let's just look at this clip from 2011, before he was even the first black comedian to ever do a one-man stand-up show in South Africa.
Trevor Noah, very talented guy, arrogant. The arrogance that this man shows is ridiculous. I mean, you know, because I don't mind self-confidence. Everybody, we're all in this business. You have to have self-confidence. But there's a thin line between self-confidence and arrogance. When you step over that, that's when the shit begins.
It's hard to say anything about Trevor he hasn't already said about himself.
Yes, he's literally always been like this. He hasn't gotten any worse, is what I mean. At least, no one that I know as a former fan would make such a claim. So then, maybe he feels that he needs to make it big in New York in order to have a career as a comedian. Well, that's also not true. Globally, comedians have always had a difficult time finding any type of gig or career or something, whatever, but that's just never been Trevor's truth. He has been successful as a South African comedian long before The Daily Show. Besides publishing a New York Times bestseller, he was also on a local soap opera, a TV radio host, performed openers for top comedians, and hosted his own late night show. And many other things. He's been there, done that to pretty much everything a comedian could want. And that was even an entire decade before he met Jon Stewart. So he basically secured the bag as a comedian and wouldn't need to depend on The Daily Show for any type of a career or a devout audience. Instead, I think this is pretty much a case of lost in translation in the most literal sense. In order for this segment to make any sense, I would have to explain some cultural context. Now, it should be obvious, but let's just make it clear. When I'm referring to any generalizations about South Africa, I will be concerned with the province, stats, and discourse relevant to Trevor Noah. In other words, I'm not trying to tell you about the lived experience of a 70-year-old white woman in Cape Town. There's 11 official languages in this country and even more variation in cultures, so I couldn't possibly speak for everyone. I'm just giving generalized opinions. So if I speak on something that contradicts your own lived experience, you may feel free to put it in my comment section. I like discourse and my opinions are open to be challenged. Many people who only heard about Trevor Noah from Jon Stewart would call Trevor Noah progressive and liberal in his politics. This is true. South Africans would also use this description. However, these words do not actually mean the same thing in South Africa in a practical sense. Now, I'll also add here that cultural superiority is weak sauce and I don't play that game. I'm never going to make the case that South African or American politics is better than one or the other. The two are just different and I feel the same way about religion or hair color. It's just what it is. Okay. So, in South Africa, you would be considered progressive if you openly criticize people, places, and things in an arguably cringy way that would make people quickly go from surprised Pikachu face into a, well, yeah, you're right, it's probably true. Many artists and journalists are blatantly censored in South Africa, where even a critical drawing of a former president became banned overnight. I will leave a link to that image in the description box, as I'm still not entirely sure whether it's within my rights to actually show it.
We've only recently come out of a time when everything we could say and everything that we were allowed to hear was censored. That's the biggest challenge in this country, is for us to get to the point where people accept the fact that we're free to say what we feel, and really free to express ourselves.
And legislation passed a couple of years ago that also made it near impossible for any mainstream news to be critical of the presidential party of South Africa. In other words, comedy and even memes are sometimes a genuine act of political rebellion in South Africa.
I think people who hide behind facades and, oh, don't say this, don't say this, it's like rubbish, man, come on. The truth, the more we tell the truth, the quicker we'll get to the front of the line, you know, the better chance we stand. That's the problem with South Africa, is that too many people don't want to admit the things. So they don't want to admit that shit is wrong. They don't want to admit that there's still massive levels of poverty. They don't want to admit that AIDS is something that's destroying the nation. They just don't, nobody wants to admit anything. We just want to live in this hoo-ha utopia world, and it's not like that. As a comedian, you've got the platform to tell the truth. You got to be that guy out there saying those things. And I mean, I mess around a lot of the time, you know. I'm not even the guy. I always admire like Loiso for that, because Loiso's the kind of guy who says that.
I'm from Cape Town, man. I grew up in Gugulethu. Yeah, man. I grew up there, man. I was actually back there today, man. It was quite cool. Do you white people know what Gugulethu is? Well, you should know you put us there, motherfuckers.
Trevor Noah thrived under these conditions, as he was never perceived as disrespectful in pointing out these differences in cultures or groups in South Africa, but rather made people laugh at themselves and each other. It's also important to note that South Africans are not generally a woke bunch. This is not because we are anti-woke or something, but rather a-woke, as in it's just not a thing here. In fact, solely based on internet discourse, news reports, and cancellations that I've personally seen, I want to say that one important difference seems to be that South Africans are socially allowed to call anyone out on anything, as long as you never tell people what they need to do or be. In other words, you might catch somebody on the street saying something like, "This taxi driver is crazy, he cannot drive and he's dangerous." But you're unlikely to find somebody saying, "This driver is dangerous and crazy, therefore we need to cancel and deplatform him. He will never be allowed to own a taxi or have a business in this town again." Now, I'm not saying that our version is better, because people will surely use that actual energy and rather cause physical harm or even hijack the taxi in question. We're still talking about Africa, guys. So what I'm saying here is that Trevor Noah was a progressive, non-woke liberal that has made fun of people's appearances and culture and was completely embraced for it. It was time and place appropriate, and if anybody dared to be offended, chances are your next of kin would even maybe bully you for it. This is our cope. So what happens when the bedrock of your comedy, the reason for your success and audience, is placed under severe scrutiny and reframed in a way to label you an outsider and possibly an enemy?
And so, of course, there was a little bit of an investigation by online fans of The Daily Show. They wanted to find out who he was and what he tweeted about in the past. Well, it turns out that as a comedian, he tends to tweet things that might be considered a little offensive.
That's right, Trevor Noah, our woke African ambassador, has a Twitter. This means that some brave people had to make it their life mission to find the exact tweet that would have Trevor fired before he even started his career. They dug up enough jokes to call him out for being offensive to women, fatphobic, anti-Semitic, and mocking the Holocaust.
So apparently, at one point he tweeted, "South Africans know how to recycle like Israel knows how to be peaceful." Now, if you look directly below that, one person said, "Sad that someone as ignorant as Trevor Noah will host The Daily Show with comments like these, #Israel @StandWithUs."
Stand with us for what? Where are we standing? Okay, so first of all, that's not even necessarily directed against Israel. It's saying that Israel is living in a non-peaceful situation. That's almost certainly true, right? Even people in Israel, I think, would agree when Hamas launches the rockets. They don't feel like they're living in peace. And on top of that, he's a frickin' comedian.
Yeah.
He's making a joke about how there isn't peace in the Middle East. To me, that particular joke is the least offensive joke I've ever heard.
Look at them, these people. Why are they like this? I will leave a link to this entire video in the description, but I find it particularly hilarious how they are trying to both say that these are just jokes made by a comedian, but also that it's offensive and that Trevor should probably apologize. Ooh, Trevor, Listen, I get it. They want to tell people to calm down and give Trevor a chance before cancelling him. This should not be considered a radical take. And like, I get it. Nobody likes their new stepdad at first, but throwing a tantrum is just no solution. However, for the young Turks to avoid being hypocritical with their previous hot takes, they also simultaneously had to condemn him.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
please,
come on,
please,
really?
please.
Like,
if you want to point out how unbearable that is, I'm with you.
Yeah.
But don't call him fat for no reason.
Yeah, I agree.
This is a very weird video, but I'm assuming they spoke for a massive amount of people, as Jon Stewart had to calm people down and Trevor Noah had to signal the beginning of the end with this tweet. To reduce my views to a handful of jokes that didn't land is not a true reflection of my character, nor my evolution as a comedian. Comedy Central, of course, had to also chime in and release a statement saying, like many comedians, Trevor Noah pushes boundaries. He's provocative and spares no one, himself included. To judge him or his comedy based on a handful of jokes is unfair. Trevor is a talented comedian with a bright future at Comedy Central. Now, I mean, all of this probably looks very stunning and brave, but you have to know that it is my opinion, and that of most South Africans that I've spoken to about this, that this apology is a blatant corporate lie. By that I mean Trevor most likely wasn't sincerely sorry here. It was most probable that his hand was forced for typical PR reasons. If you want to see how he really thinks and why he is considered progressive here in South African context, then let's look at this more sincere response that he gave against this hater.
Racial observations have very much formed, at least in the early stages, the backbone of your stand-up comedy career. Do you now regret some of the jokes you made? Let me give you an example. You said, my mother, black South African, was saying, get me a white guy, get me a white guy. Well, my father was white Swiss, of course he liked chocolate.
That sounds funny to me, even when you say it. That sounded really funny. Why would I regret that?
Why would you regret that? Because some people say that's not really very funny.
But the people laugh. Everyone can say something is not really funny. This is the way some people don't
But
like
is it
Indian
more than
food.
that? Okay, let me give you an example. We have a very well-established black comedian in Britain called Lenny Henry.
Yes.
And he has said that he regrets doing that kind of joke where he said he would wipe his sweating brow and say, I'm leaking chocolate.
But that's different.
Well, it's not. It's using chocolate, isn't it?
But that is different.
Well,
the Swiss love chocolates. Is not a term that is pejorative.
But you're referring to your mother's skin colour as chocolate. What he says...
Yes, because my mom is proud to be dark, beautiful chocolate. Yeah. That's what she's saying. Well, and this is, in the book, I talk about this as well. I go, I saw people and race as chocolates.
I wouldn't use that. I wouldn't use that.
No.
I'm that colour and I wouldn't say that.
Listen, when I grew up, I believed that all people were chocolates. My mom was dark chocolates, my dad was white chocolates, and I was milk chocolates. So I see all people. So you see that as funny, but do you not realise that some people might not like that? And Lenny Henry went on to say that joke about how he was leaking chocolate. He says, I knew there had to be a better way of trying to put the message over, putting your jokes over without having to pick on people because of their colour or because of their race. Yes, but...
His view is different from yours.
Because he's Lenny Henry and I'm Trevor Noah.
Yeah, but he's black.
Yes, but he was talking about leaking chocolate, implying that his skin color was not something that belonged to him. That is a different joke.
He's just trying to say that his skin color is chocolate.
No.
You're splitting hair.
Now, I'm not calling him a fake or a liar. The situation is a little bit more nuanced than that. Basically, if your boss is telling you that there's a dress code, you have to comply. The only problem is that he was successful precisely for what he's being told not to do, which is to make fun of people. In other words, he was most likely told that the only person he's allowed to make proper fun of in the way that he really wants to is Donald Trump. And that's why the content well has dried up and he looks less and less funny every single day. Now, I'm not saying that he's a victim of the industry. This is entirely his choice. He's old enough to know better and he knows exactly what he's doing. My concerns is thus that we are probably missing out on some fantastic fucking comedy that is being censored or chucked away because somebody might be offended. And secondly, everyone in America who's progressive is now uncomfortable admitting that he actually isn't funny because you're afraid that somebody's gonna call you a racist. It's pretty fucking shit. So now you might wonder, why would an adult, autonomous and censored man choose to live in New York as a mediocre comedian instead of in Johannesburg as one of the greats? Well, it's not for the money or the fame. It's this. If you look at these crime percentages, you will notice two things. One, being a South African is a nervous condition. Angst is a state of being and nobody can thrive or self-actualize when you can't even buy groceries for yourself. And secondly, look at this. Look at this. Look at it. If you're getting insulted in South Africa, you're probably having an above average good day. This is great. This is the best bad thing that could possibly happen to you. Yeah, I wasn't kidding when I was saying that this is our cope. Literally. So Trevor Noah traded the hustle and bustle of being the best under harsh conditions in order to be average and at peace. I can't totally say that I blame the guy, eh? It seems like a natural choice for many people as they age, and I still maintain that Trevor is an excellent comedian. However, the best I can say for him right now is that he used to be funny. But in the end of the day, I'm just a thought with an opinion and I don't know shit about fuck. Bila.